welcome back. So let's jump straight into this idea of how we can increase your hypnotic stare. Now, to give you a little bit more of an overview of the program itself, it's going to be working in 3 parts. Right now, we're going to be looking at how to increase your hypnotic gaze with your eyes. The next part we're going to be looking at is a little idea or method that we call spotting unconscious moments, which if you've seen any of our other training series before, you'll get a pretty good in-depth look of how and what that is. But I will be going into it today on the next video in a lot of detail about what it is, how to create them, what unconscious moments are, when do we use them, how do we know what one is, and all that stuff. So rest assured that will be coming. And the big umbrella to all of this, the main idea that can encapsulate this course that you're with us today, is this idea of a very well-known principle called the utilization method. Now, this was brought famous by the master of all hypnosis, and still believe he is, and obviously one of my idols, was Dr. Milton Erickson. Now, if you haven't heard of any of Erickson's work before, you can Google it, go on the internet, there's plenty of stuff about the man. The man was an absolute hypnotic genius. And the number one principle that he utilized was the utilization principle. The utilization principle states that anything that your client gives you can be turned into an induction, can be turned into some sort of hypnotic trance, and can be used for any type of therapy. So what Dr. Milton Erickson would do, instead of going into a session pre-planning or pre-scripting or pre-thinking of techniques that he would use, he would go in there blank-minded. He'd have a rough idea of where he needed to go. And over the 40, 50, 60 years that he was a therapist and a medical doctor, people would see him treating clients and thinking, how the hell did he know to say that? How the hell did he create that type of trance? How the hell did he create that type of hypnotic phenomena, whether it was an arm levitation or eyes would glue shut, or the person had the inability to speak, or they would lose track of time, or parts of their memory? It's because Dr. Milton Erickson was using the utilization principle. He would hear along through conversation, being a conversational therapist that he was, and he would utilize things that people would say, their own memories, their own ideas about hypnosis, their own ideas about how to recover from a certain ailment, their own issues that they would present to Dr. Milton Erickson, and he would utilize it, spin it around, maybe encapsulate it in some fancy language, but he would utilize those principles inside of his hypnotic repertoire. And this is something we're going to be discovering today. I'm going to give you my version, how I do it, and it's a very simple system to follow. And then what we're going to do at the end, there'll be 3 different steps, and then at the end we're going to put them all together so they become an exclusive method for you to take away. And we want to create trance in seconds, if not close to 30, 40 seconds or whatever it is. So let's get started on this idea of the hypnotic eyes. Now, where did this idea stem from? If you've ever seen any of the cool old literature of hypnosis, or you've seen one of those black and white movies where maybe a vampire comes along and he looks at his victim and all of a sudden they become hypnotized, and sometimes on the literature itself or the pictures you'll see some fancy hypnotic rays coming out of the eyes. Now, this idea has been presented throughout the history of hypnosis, and it's one of those things that just gets shrugged off. People think, well, you can't shoot hypnotic rays out of your eyes. And yes, that's probably true, but the idea is a very sanct idea. It's something that we can utilize as a hypnotherapist without the expected rays to come out, but the principle is vastly important. That's what we're going to be looking at today. So what is this about? I want you to consider a time maybe you've been out in public, or you've been at a club or a pub or something like that, and you've had a random person stare at you. Now, even if you know this person or this person's completely random, what tends to happen? You'd be looking at that person going, oh, what's that person staring at? I start to feel a little bit weird. I start to feel a little bit insecure. And I think, what are they staring at? For women that are watching this, this is something that I bring up on my training courses all the time when we're teaching hypnotherapy, is when you're looked at by a guy at a club that you really don't like or don't find attractive or something like that, you start to feel a little bit weird inside. But something interesting happens. If you can recall one of those times when you are being stared at, do you notice that this person that is staring at you captures your attention? It's almost like your mind goes blank for a quick second, and before you start to think, what is this person staring at, they have your attention. Now, we know the initial 3-step system for any hypnotic interaction is the ABS, and I'll repeat this on every video and every training series that we do. The A stands for attention, the B stands for bypass of critical thinking, or the conscious mind. We've got conscious and we've got the unconscious mind. And the S is to stimulate an unconscious process. But if you've heard in our training series before, you've been around the hypnotherapy industry, it's nothing new. But I want to add one more little thing to take it from a 3-step system to a 4. The A, attention, B, bypass the critical thinking, S is to stimulate an unconscious moment, which is what we're going to be looking at today, the unconscious moments, which is the next video. But how about we put a simple U at the end? U standing for utilization. So let's do A, B, S, U. Attention, bypass, unconscious moment. The stimulation of the unconscious moment is the S, and the U is to utilize what happens in trance. Now, this is the secret. Like I said, this is going to encapsulate the whole course together, is this utilization principle. So let's move back to the eyes. So what are we going to do? I want you to consider that time when you have been stared at. And what I want you to notice is when you are being stared at, that blank mind that you will have, but you'll notice you'll get a sense of pressure inside of you that says, what is this person staring at? Am I in danger? Am I in safety? Is this person just a weirdo and I wish he'd stop, or she'd stop looking at me? Something like that. It's this type of pressure, which we call psychological energy, that has to be utilized. We can use this inside hypnosis. So thinking of that as an idea, we're not going to be sitting there staring at our clients like we're going to do something malicious or we're going to be weird about it. We're going to use the same psychological principle, which is when you stare at somebody, it creates a bit of internal pressure about what's happening. I'm not sure about this situation. It's what the conscious mind does. It starts to think, am I in danger? Do I need to flee? Do I need to fight? It's the fight and flight mechanism that we're using. But we're going to do it in a positive way. What if there was a way to utilize and grasp onto that psychological energy, but do it in such a caring way? Your client still felt the pressure, but it was a nice pressure. Just think about that. Wouldn't that be handy? We now have their attention. We're utilizing the energy that gets created inside them, that pressure, and we're going to do it in such a nice, caring way that they don't retrieve themselves. They don't fled, and they stay staring, and we stay having their attention. So what is this about? The principle I want you to think about is where your attention goes, energy flows. Now, this is the principle for this video. Where attention goes, energy flows. So what the first thing I want to do is have you understand that this can be used as a formal trance by itself, and we'll go through that idea, but it can also be used outside or inside another hypnotherapy technique that you have. And we'll look at those two ideas, being we're hypnotherapists, we're learning about this. Let's keep it in the context of hypnotherapy itself. And if you want to use it on the outside, it's fairly adjustable to outside as well. You just take out a couple of steps and maybe it's hypnotic. So let's look at step 1. First thing we want to do is we just want to imagine for a second that we're sitting with our client, and let's use it as, let's say we've done a bit of a chat with them. They've come in and said, you know what, Scott, I want to quit smoking. I want to lose weight loss or something like that. I want to lose some anxiety that I have. So what am I going to do with this? I'm going to have a bit of a chat to them like normal, being a conversational therapist. I'm going to explore the problem bit. We're not going to get into that today. That'll be another video. But what I'm doing straight away is the whole time I'm talking to my client, I am using these. Yes, even with the glasses. I'm staring at my client. But I'm not doing it in a way that I'm trying to do something to them or, get full control of their mind, because we know we're smart enough that's impossible. But I'm doing it in such a way that I'm using my eyes to gather their attention. And the whole time they're talking to me, I'm staring at them. And I'm creating that sense of energy, that sense of pressure, that little baby sense of awkwardness. Now, the awkwardness is fine. We don't want a lot of it, and we don't want a lot of, why is Scott staring at me? Stop staring at me. I feel weird. But I want enough to grab their attention so they go, wow, what's Scott staring at me for? What's he looking at? This idea of them being curious about what's occurring is what I want to utilize. And I'll continue to stare. But the first thing I want to do inside my mind is I want to stare at them with a caring nature. So there's a couple of ideas I have in my mind when I'm doing this. First off, the eyes are creating pressure, so I have their attention. Remember the ABS formula, the ABS-U formula, have their attention. And because it's a little bit unusual about why this person's staring at me, I've actually done the B portion as well, which is bypass critical thinking. So while the critical mind or the conscious mind's going, why is he staring at me? What have I done? What is he looking at? I feel a little bit peculiar. This is a little bit unusual. This is not normal. Whatever the list is. While the conscious mind's trying to figure out what this is about, I've bypassed it. Look at bypassed as I pushed it out of the way, and now I get a direct pathway into the unconscious mind, which is the S part, stimulate an unconscious process, which will be the next video. So we're looking at them. What I'm thinking about in my mind is I'm thinking, wow, you're about to go into trance, and you're going to really enjoy it. This is going to be the best thing you've ever felt, and it's going to absolutely change your life. This is the idea I'm thinking in my head. Now, why would I be thinking this idea? It's because my mannerisms will show. If I'm thinking in my head, oh, I've got complete control over you, when you're in trance, I'm going to steal your credit card and do all that sort of stuff, it will show in my unconscious processes. Maybe I'll get a bit of a mean face, or they'll be able to sense that something's not right. Their unconscious mind will sense this from my unconscious mind. So if I'm thinking, wow, you're really going to enjoy this trance, it's almost like I have a present to give you, and I cannot wait for you to experience this. I cannot wait for you to experience trance and to change your life, because I know it will, and I'm here to help, and I'm here to care about you. And this is the idea I have in my mind. Now, when I'm looking at my client, you'll notice that you start to get a bit of a smirk because you get excited about it. I almost look at it as the person I'm treating would be a family member or somebody that I really loved and cared about. Now, this is important, because if I'm considering this in my head and I'm staring at my client, they're seeing a little happy face, they're seeing a nice posture, they're not seeing anything mean or disruptive or hunched over like I want to do something to them, but they're getting a sense like, wow, this person really cares about me. Remember the connection we talked about? It's an unconscious connection. Wow, this person really has my best interests at heart. And that's it. That's the first part of the method, is we want to utilize these eyes. Now, what's an easy way to build up this hypnotic gaze of yours is very simple. What I want you to do is spend a 30 seconds or 45 seconds, even a minute, every day, and I want you just to stare at something. That's it. Now, when you're using this on your clients, you can blink. We're not robots. We're not trying to keep our eyes open and not blink. It's irrelevant. It's against the purpose of what we're doing. But I just want you to stare at something. And what this will do, this will train your own attention. So that when your client's talking, your attention's not scattered looking around the room or your office thinking, oh, what do I do next? You're perfectly in control of your attention. And if you've got complete control of your attention, they will have attention back on you. It's a win-win for both of us. So not only do we want to gather their attention, but I want to train my own. And it's simple. Something I still do now is I find something and I stare at it and I stare and I stare. And I actually notice throughout time, the more I stare, my body starts to become a bit relaxed, which we know is great for trance. If you ever want to hypnotize somebody, the best way to do it is to go first. Start to feel like you're going into trance yourself, and they will pick up on it. Remember that unconscious connection. If I feel like I'm going into trance and they can see it, it's an unconscious or a non-verbal cue for them to go into trance as well. So that's it. That's the eye fixation. This is how to create your hypnotic eyes. Now, it doesn't stop here. The next video we're going to look at is what happens when we stare. What are we going to see? How do we know it's working? And this is where spotting unconscious moments comes into it. It's one of my personal favorite secrets of hypnosis, is the spotting unconscious moments. So when you're ready, let's move on to the next video and put the second piece of the puzzle together of what are we going to see? How do we know our eyes are having the effect we need to? We'll see you on the next video.